everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, Adopting Power BI for Your Enterprise Organization. As mentioned, my name is Amanda Quon, and I'm a Senior Business Intelligence and Analytics Consultant at Thorogood. I'm also very excited to be here today as your Power BI expert. For those of you who have attended our webcasts in the past, you might know that Power BI is very near and dear to my heart. As a quick background to me, I've been working with Power BI since spring of 2015, back when the tool was still in beta. I was working with a customer that was looking to migrate some Power View reports in Excel to Power BI, and it's been quite a ride and quite a bit of fun watching the tool grow over the last 2.5 years or so. So if you have any questions throughout the webcast today, please feel free to send me an email. My contact information is on the slide here, or connect with me on LinkedIn if you're interested in chatting further. So pretty simple agenda for the day, quick intro on Thorogood, and then jumping right into Power BI. I'll do a quick overview of the tools within the Power BI platform and some core concepts, as kind of that foundation is pretty important to understanding the considerations for the adoption for an enterprise organization. From there, I'll actually talk about next steps and how we've helped our customers implement Power BI. So in terms of Thorogood, we are a specialist consultancy firm focused on meeting customers' needs in the business intelligence analytics space. We do this by understanding our customers' business goals, bringing to the table two things. One, our knowledge of the technical opportunities, and two, our expertise in the given business sector or industry to help provide the solution to best meet the customer's needs. We are based out of the UK, but we operate globally from our offices in London, New York, Philadelphia, Bangalore, Singapore, and Sao Paulo. I am here today based out of our Philadelphia office, but I actually work from a satellite office in Boston. So if anyone on the call today ever finds themselves in the Boston or New England area and eager to talk about Power BI or other business intelligence tools, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'd be very happy to meet up. We provide end-to-end services to our customers, not just from an application delivery perspective, but kind of starting at the beginning, things like strategies and roadmaps, through that application design, development, training, adoption, maintenance, support. We're an independent firm. This allows us to collaborate with a wide array of popular and niche technology vendors with tools to meet the needs of our customers. Doing so allows us to, first and foremost, understand your business case and then provide recommendations on the right tool or tools to use for the job rather than the other way around. We partner with many of these technology vendors, and for the purposes of today's webcast on Power BI, I wanted to highlight our Microsoft partnership. We have been a Microsoft Gold partner for over 10 years and are certified in data analytics, data platform, collaboration and content, and the cloud platform. Our partnership gives us a great interface into the Microsoft development team, allowing for open two-way communication, both from Microsoft directly to our customers, as well as feedback from our customers back to the developers, especially through our membership in the Business Intelligence and Advanced Analytics Partner Advisory Council. For Power BI, in case any of you have played with the tool before, you'll know that on that top-hand ribbon, there is a Partner Showcase button. If you click that, you'll actually be directed to Microsoft's official Power BI Showcase portal, where Thorogood does have 3 different applications posted. We have a manufacturing trade profitability solution for consumer packaged goods, a pharmaceutical supply chain solution, and an insurance underwriting analysis. So feel free to check those out. All right, let's talk about the good stuff, Power BI. As a quick overview, what is Power BI? It is Microsoft's business intelligence software offering intended to compete directly with tools like Tableau or Qlik. With monthly updates available, Power BI is constantly improving and presenting new ways for users to visualize data. It's incredibly intuitive, user-friendly, making it well-positioned as a self-service platform to help empower users to make data-driven decisions for their business. The platform has 4 main offerings. The first one is called Power BI Desktop, which, fun fact, is a desktop application. It resides on your desktop laptop, and it's really where an author would be able to load, transform data, and build visual reports. So this is where all of the data set report authoring occurs, where the magic happens. From there, your report author will be able to publish that information over to Power BI's online service, accessible either, say, via a web browser on your computer, maybe a web browser on your mobile phone, or in a mobile-optimized app that's provided by Microsoft called the Power BI app. This is where you'll have the vast majority, your mass consumption of users being able to actually connect to those reports and interact with them. So as a simple summary, desktop is on your desktop, authoring reports for few users. Power BI Online can share reports for many users. Clearly, it's more complicated and nuanced than that, but as an intro should suffice. And that was it. That was it for a couple of years, actually. But, and you know there's a but because there's a gaping space on the slide, Microsoft has been constantly listening and responding to customer requests, and recently came up with a fourth offering as of November 1st of this year, which is 5 weeks and 1 day ago today, and that's the Power BI Report Server. Power BI Report Server is an on-premise solution for sharing Power BI content. So if you think about it, it's really geared toward those that have been playing with the Power BI desktop application. They really want to share it with their other colleagues, but the organization is not quite yet ready to move over to the cloud. So everything remains on-premise for you. This covers the different tools within Power BI, but exactly how could they work together? So let's cover what a typical Power BI workflow could look like, and I'll start with those content developers or report authors. These are the guys and gals that are actually developing the reports on their laptops before sharing it widely. Within the Power BI desktop tool, content developers can connect to data sources that reside in two main types of locations: cloud data sources, like Salesforce, for example, or data on-premise, say your internal P&L. Now, you'll eventually want those content developers to share and publish those reports for mass user consumption. For those end users to be able to connect to both the cloud data sources and the on-premise data sources, you will need something called a data management gateway set up for the on-premise data sources. This will ensure that all the necessary security items are installed and everything can flow through for all of your end users there. So just an important consideration to think about to ensure that those content developers are connecting to on-prem data sources with DMG installed. So after your content developers create their reports, they can publish to what's called an app workspace. The app workspace will bundle all of the content between your data sets and your reports and allows your developers to actually create dashboards. Additionally, you can add users to the app workspace with, say, read-only access, and they can actually view the different reports and dashboards that you've created, and you can run things like user acceptance testing and do more testing from there. Once you feel that those applications, those reports, dashboards are verified, you can publish them to an app. Once again, very similar to a workspace where all the content is bundled, and this is where you can have many of your app consumers or end users actually be able to access it. Those end users won't be able to edit your data connections or things like that, but they can interact with the reports themselves. What this also allows you to do is something we like to call iterative dashboard development. So that app workspace, if you think of it as kind of a pre-production or a testing environment, can continually be evolved and changed based off of your end user kind of feedback that you've received over time. And during any development changes, it won't affect the actual applications that those end users are using on a day-to-day basis. So as you're continuing to develop within the workspace, and you've determined that your testing is complete and everything has been verified, you can republish and push those updated changes to the apps for your end users. So this is a typical example of a Power BI workflow and how it could look like. But what about how it gets adopted within an organization? As with many business intelligence tools, we see Power BI growing within organizations from that initial interest through wide-scale usage via multiple paths. The two main pathways to global adoption we've worked with customers stem from either pockets of power users or as a technology direction from central services. Depending on the size and scale of your organization, both paths may be happening at the same time, and I've certainly seen that before. But in any case, all pathways end with that same goal of wide-scale adoption. On the left, you can see the scenario play out, where a few power users have picked up Power BI because of that free option of Power BI Desktop, And then eventually they share their reports with their team and beyond. And this is when the growing user base begins, and it gets IT teams involved to that global adoption. On the right-hand side, you can see the other scenario play out, where IT teams decide to adopt Power BI for one reason or another. Often we see it as cost or user adoptability. And then they start to spread interest through community groups and roadshows through the organization. Teams will ultimately look to develop those Power users to author reports and, once again, continue the drive for global adoption. My aim in today's webcast is to show you that regardless of which pathway or pathways to enterprise adoption you're considering or may currently be in the midst of, there are the same sets of considerations to be evaluated and assessed to effectively adopt Power BI. The considerations I'll focus on today will span across these 5 areas. Note that while I've broken these considerations out into what seems to be very discrete sections, there is a lot of interplay and overlap between these, making it even more important to ensure that you're reviewing all of the elements as a whole rather than making decisions on each item separately. These 5 key areas we'll focus on today will answer questions such as, what are the key components required to set up Power BI installation? Who will create reports, and how can reports leverage existing data investments? What reports will be shared amongst teams? Will they be shared to just teams, to organizations? How will users access them? Now that you have users sharing and viewing data, what's needed to manage the security? And in order to scale throughout the organization, what are the licensing implications? Power BI provides out-of-the-box connectivity to numerous data sources, whether in the cloud, in an on-premise database, or local to your machine. Microsoft is constantly adding new connection types to expand the reach of insights business users are able to make. So I've shown here on the slide a small sampling of some of those data connections, but there are many, many more available. If you want to connect to a data source, Power BI likely has the ability to do so. The type of data sources you're likely to use in your organization is an important consideration because there are different challenges and or limitations with each. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't or can't use particular data sources, but rather you need to understand what data sources could be utilized and think through the best way to implement Power BI for best practices, performance, consumption, administration, etc. Understanding where data sources reside, in cloud or on-premise, is important. This understanding will drive how Power BI can connect to data and store it. So there are 3 main ways you're able to connect to data. Once again, each has its own advantages, disadvantages, limitations. The most common is by importing a copy of the data to Power BI. This uses in-memory, high-performing Power BI engine to query the copy of the data stored in Power BI rather than going back to the source. So think about copying X number of lines within an Excel workbook and then creating a visualization on top of that. Power BI would do something very similar in this case. Depending on the data source, Power BI can also instead create a live connection to the data. We most often see this with analysis services. And in this case, data is stored in and retrieved for the reports from the data source. Power BI can also run in direct query mode, once again, depending on the source. Direct query is often used with relational databases for the most part that we've seen on our side. In this scenario, Power BI would create an internal data set with your metadata information, but it's not actually storing data there. So when running reports and dashboards, Power BI queries that internal data set, which is actually querying your source. When deciding which connection and data storage mode to set up in Power BI, it is important to understand your existing sources, as well as the potential future data sources that reports might utilize. It's also good to understand the amount of data, the volume, as well as how frequently the reports will be consumed. So you can think of that from a performance perspective. Large gigabytes or terabytes of data might not be best or even feasible with the import data option, for example. And then in that case, you'd look for maybe a live connection or direct query. But in any case, many different considerations when it comes to how to connect to data based off of those data sources. And as mentioned earlier, considerations do interplay with each other, and licensing also has implications on each of these data connection and storage modes that you will want to take into account when deciding how to access your data. So what about any existing data investments? A common thing we've heard from our customers is this. You know, we have so many data models, reports, dashboards, and they already exist. Time and money have already been invested into creating these reports we have in-house. We're not looking to throw all of that away and start from scratch with this new Power BI tool. So if possible, how and where and when can we leverage existing data models with a future rollout from Power BI? I'm sure this sounds very familiar. As an organization, you might have already invested in the development and evolution of, say, Power Pivot models in Excel or analysis services models. Maybe you're a bit more advanced with some analytical R models. So these are already acting as your source of truth and have been certified through processes in place in your organization, for example. Luckily, and I'm sure you can probably see a trend here on the slide as they're all Microsoft-backed technologies, but all of these can be data connections for a Power BI report. But keep in mind that depending on how and who is managing these existing data models, there may be additional practices that need to be established to make changes depending on your particular Power BI reporting needs. It is a good idea, as part of an enterprise adoption, to consider putting guidelines and best practices in place for when users should leverage existing models versus creating their own models directly in Power BI. Thinking through this lens will help limit the different versions of data floating around the organization, while also still allowing users to explore the data and gain insights on their own. So we've discussed the options associated with data sources, connections, storage. We also started to consider guidelines and introducing data connections and when users should leverage existing data models. But the fun stuff, the front-end visualizations, what are some considerations there? There are many ways users can maximize the potential of Power BI. The two extensibility options we'll look at today are custom visuals and R-powered visuals. These are additional add-ins that have both benefits and drawbacks. You might want to consider adopting a policy for use and implementation to ensure security, performance, stability, and scalability of these additional enhancements. Custom visuals on the left-hand side here are either self-created, created by Microsoft, or created by third-party vendors. These additional visualizations are typically used by report authors to view data in a meaningful manner often because the visualization does not exist out of the box from Power BI. But challenges may arise with custom visuals created by third parties because they have not been formally approved by Microsoft, so there's no guarantee that the code has been fully tested. Additionally, depending on the category of the visual, it might have functional limitations. R-powered visuals on the right, very similar to custom visuals, but they do require the report creator to have knowledge and capability as related to the R programming language. So while I have mentioned some of the drawbacks of these extended visuals, that isn't to say you shouldn't allow for their use. They can be very valuable for your end users, and the benefits may outweigh those potential challenges. But what is important to recognize from an enterprise adoption perspective is to understand those limitations and challenges so that report creators know when and how they should be used within reports. So you've created reports within Power BI Desktop, but how do you then share it with your colleagues and your other team members within your organization? Power BI has evolved over the years where they've now come to the point where they have an established means of sharing through Power BI app workspaces as well as apps. So the workspaces and apps can be utilized in a number of different ways depending on how your organization wants to implement them. A straightforward pathway that we've seen to sharing reports and dashboards has been through the Power BI Desktop as your authoring tool, publishing the content to the app workspace in Power BI Online Service, and then once ready to be shared with a large audience, publishing it to the app. While Power BI does not yet have a true methodology for those different environments, you can look to treat the app workspaces and apps themselves in a manner that would allow you to maintain kind of a non-production environment for development and changes and a production environment where your end users can consume the reports. So you can envision it as your desktop and app workspace for your authors, owners, and specific unit testers and user experience testers, and then the apps themselves for the large-scale sharing and collaboration. When it comes to managing any business intelligence implementation, there are many elements at play that require careful thought and evaluation. This is no different with Power BI. Common questions include, who's going to be the admin of your Power BI setup? Where does IT step in and administer Power BI? What about self-service? How is data privacy enforced and maintained? What aspects of your Power BI setup need to have security applied? How will the apps and workspaces be managed and organized? How will enterprise data governance and standards be implemented and enforced? Is there a need to monitor usage and performance to help with scalability? These questions and more are important to think about and examine the requirements associated with them. It is highly recommended for an enterprise rollout of Power BI that processes are in place to administer and manage the Power BI environment. This will help to ensure that your environment is not overwhelmed, that it is performing well, it's efficient, and it's easy to use from a user perspective. Scaling and integrating your Power BI solution will ultimately provide the ability to adopt Power BI in your organization. There are currently 3 options or tiers of Power BI licenses. These are Power BI Free, Power BI Pro, and Power BI Premium, with, I'm sure as you can tell, considerations and caveats for each of these. Free is how we see a lot of our users get their feet wet. It's an easy download, but doesn't really allow you to share content on a wide scale. We have seen many organizations already adopt Power BI Pro, as report authors do require those Pro licenses in order to share with others. This does act as a per-user license, but what is the minimum number of Pro licenses needed for your enterprise use? Premium is a recently added tier of licensing now available that caters toward enterprise implementations. So as an organization, you'll want to look and understand the additional offerings within Premium, like the ability to control capacity behind each app workspace, distributing reports to users without purchasing those per-user licenses, etc. In addition to the 3 standard tiers, you can further build on your adoption through Power BI Embedded. This allows you to actually integrate certain reports and dashboards directly into a custom web app and mobile application. Once again, another means of integrating and scaling Power BI to your users. The licensing model and integration options will ultimately determine what doors are open to your users for Power BI and how integrated Power BI can be within your organization. All right, so now you have a million questions to think about with Power BI. What do you do now? What are your next steps? It's important to understand exactly where your organization currently falls within the spectrum of Power BI adoption. You can be in the tool comparison evaluation stage. This is usually when an organization has begun formally documenting the Power BI capabilities and considering it in comparison to other BI tools like Tableau or Qlik. User adoption, this is when experienced technical users have recently begun using the tool in free trials and are starting to become familiar with its capabilities. Report sharing, when those pockets of users have started actually sharing them with small groups of business users. Evaluating licensing options comes into play once companies are content with their evaluation of Power BI and are looking to move forward. Once Power BI is in-house, organizations will start strategizing on rolling out some existing, well-tested and well-developed reports to a broad audience of business users, plus maybe begin prioritizing other data sets and reports to be created and distributed. And then finally, with self-service and consuming users, user training and empowerment come into play to skill up others to make the most out of your tool investment. So wherever you happen to fall on this spectrum, myself and my colleagues here at Thorogood can help progress your enterprise's adoption of Power BI. We can help in a variety of capacities with Power BI or other business intelligence and analytics needs, whether it's training, a strategic roadmap, maybe planning your first large-scale implementation, et cetera. Please do reach out if you're looking for help with any aspect of your BI architecture. And before you go, I really, really hope that you found today's session valuable, and thank you so much for joining and listening to me gush about all things Power BI. Any feedback, positive or otherwise, I would very much appreciate. My contact details here on the slide. So please reach out with any comments or questions. And once again, thank you very much for joining and have a great day.